In this video, we're talking about what is a lactic threshold test and how do you use that information to help your training. Well, first, with a lactic threshold test, you need a heart rate monitor. The idea behind doing a lactic threshold test is learning what specific effort or intensity that you should be running at. There's two main energy systems. There's actually three, but we'll only talk about two: aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic is what we use for like 5Ks, 10Ks, and all the way above. Anaerobic is used for more sprinting events like 400 meters and kind of 50-50 in an 800 meters. So if we want to train for 5K and above, we should be training predominantly the aerobic system. In this way, then we need to know for us when we are in the aerobic system and not. So this is the way we would do a lactic threshold test. You can see on the screen, we run at a certain speed, and then each 3 minutes to 6 minutes, we increase the speed. We then take what the heart rate is at that time, and we take what your effort is at that time. In this way, then we have your internal measures. People ask sometimes, do you need to be very fit to do this test? No, because it's an internal measure. You then hop off the treadmill, and we take a little piece of blood from the ear that tells us how much lactic is in the system. And lactic is a byproduct of when we're in the anaerobic system. So this is like if we had a hybrid car. If it was running fully electric, we can imagine that being fully aerobic. Once it starts producing a little bit of smoke out the exhaust, you know that the engine is being used as well as the hybrid. Okay? What we want to see is that over time, we'll see that there's more anaerobic as we increase the speed and less aerobic. And we can continue that until we get a graph here. So I'm just going to go through this graph. So what you see this graph is doing is it's flat for the first few stages. So that's telling us it's 100% aerobic at that time. Okay, but after a while, as we keep increasing the speed, there's going to be this little increase in it. And then at that increase, that tells you that we're no longer 100% aerobic. Okay, so that's still an easy pace. That can still feel like 6 out of 10 intensity, but we're now a little bit anaerobic and some aerobic. So that's really challenging the aerobic system. If we increase the pace again, the amount of anaerobic and the amount of lactic continues to increase until eventually we get this shoot, we get this big spike that you can see at the end of the curve. What's occurred there is now any increase in pace is purely anaerobic and not aerobic. Okay, and then from this, we can work out set zones. Okay, so we can see it's kind of flat here with this curve, and then we spike off at the end, and the top it will tell us our heart rates, so we can plot what our heart rate was relative to the lactic. And in that way then we know if we're at this certain heart rate, we were at that level of lactic. When we're doing it then, we have these kind of graphs here, and we can see that for the first ones, it was like 1 to start with, then it went down to 0.8 because we were clearing lactic, 1, 0.9, 0.9, but then after that 0.9, it jumps to like 1.2. So that tells us that's the first jump, and you can see the next stage is 1.7, which is another jump, and then 2.3, another jump, until eventually it starts to just shoot up. And then that gives us 5 different zones that we can use. We can have our recovery zone, and we know the heart rate. So that person should do less than 156 beats per minute to be in their recovery zone. Then we have our zone 2, which is kind of like steady running. Zone 3, which would be kind of marathon pace. Zone 4 is our lactic threshold pace. Any heart rate above this is purely anaerobic. Therefore, when we're trying to improve our aerobic performance, we don't go above this pace. If we are, we're training the wrong system for the one that we want to use. And then we can use that information to develop training. So say we have someone's zones, we know that, say for example, in that first week, if they do 4 by 7 minutes at zone 3, and they can see there that zone 3 is 162 to 178. So they have to be within that heart rate zone, and that would correspond with the lactic session. So we know for that person on that day, as long as they're hitting them in those heart rates, they're working their appropriate zone. On the Saturday, for example, we might do faster 3 by 5 minutes at zone 4, And as long as they're within 178 and 185, that's working that appropriate zone. The key thing to know for lactic threshold tests is you only need to get one basically in your life because your heart rate zones don't really change. And secondly, they're so unique. You can see here, these heart rate zones are very high. Other people, their lactic threshold, their zone 4 would be maybe 160. Get the test once, and then you have the results forever. If you want to get a test, just contact us on everardpilates@gmail.com and we can set it up if you're in Ireland or the UK. If you have any questions on that, just put it in the comments and we'll get back to you. Thank you.